1, 9:42, call the tax committee, planning and zoning committee to order. Amanda, would you call the roll, please?
Sumo,
Present.
Curtis.
Yes.
Awful, here, Barr.
Present. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Curtis? Mr. Zumo, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Has everyone had a chance to read the claims?
No, we never know.
Is there a motion to approve the claims? Mr. Zumo, second. Amanda, call the roll, please.
Sumo,
Yes.
Curtis. Awful, here, Barr.
Yes. Are there any public comments? Reports from the departments. Mrs. Suber.
So last month I reported that the legislature had passed Senate Bill 825, which would make changes to the primary election. The governor has signed that, so we are dealing with a late June primary election rather than having it in the normal March. So all of those circulation dates and filing dates for candidates are going to be completely changed. Where we would normally start in August for circulation, we're going to start in January, and filing would normally be in December, and now it's going to be in March. So we're going to be about, 4 months behind on the election for the primary. Then I also reported last month that we were working on our purge of voters. So all of the voter cards were able to be mailed out in the middle of June, like the 15th and 16th. So all of you should have received your voter cards in the mail. We're starting to get back the cards for the people that were undeliverable, and for any voters that live out of county, they're starting to contact us back. So we are getting several cards back. We do have to do a follow-up for those cards that are undeliverable. So we have to send another card out in the mail to get a confirmation, because the voter cards aren't forwardable. That's a hard word to say. So anyway, if we get a forwarding address, the post office sends it back, and we have to send another card out to that forwarding address so they can confirm that that is their address. So we're working on that. We're also going to start working on records disposal. We have a lot of like sample ballots or test ballots and ballots from prior elections that we will be able to purge to make more room for the coming elections. And then we are also every other year we also do polling place ADA compliance surveys, which we did that last in 2019. We did the actual compliance survey where we went around and actually filled out the survey for each polling place. We do have signs and mats and like ramp, they're like small ramp rubber mat things to deliver to some of the polling places, so that will happen in the next few months. But other than that, that's where we're at.
Now, the purging of the ballots, do you use a shredding service to do that?
We actually, the highway department burns them for us, so they have a big pit that they take everything and
And the polling places, how close are we to being compliant in all of them?
We are not close, like the Concord polling place, there is no way we would be able to make the current polling place ADA compliant. Absolutely no way. The problem we run into is there's nowhere in Concord to have a compliant polling place. So that's just a problem in some of these smaller communities. It's just like the Prairie Green polling location is somewhat compliant, but there are some issues because it's at a firehouse in the middle of the country. If any of you know where Prairie Green is at, there's a church and a firehouse and houses. So anyway, like for parking, in order to not block the emergency vehicle doors, people have to park on the roads or in the grass. And so that can pose a problem. We have talked to the fire department and asked if they can, like just for that day, for election day, if they can park their vehicles outside, so in case someone pulls up in front of their door, there's not an issue. So it's just one of those things that I don't know that we'll be able to get them all 100% in compliance because of lack of buildings.
Right. Well, are there any repercussions in from the state?
Well, we can ask for a 2-year, what do I want to call it? It's kind of like a waiver to where it's just that they know that we can't find another place because there is no other place. Unless the townships or county run into some money that they can pour into a brand new building or a sidewalk or, John, you vote in Concord Township, right?
Yes, yeah.
So the park is where we had it for the last elections because of COVID, but we normally have it at the town hall there. And the step going into the building is about a foot tall.
Is the park compliant then?
The park isn't, I mean, it's a little more compliant than the town hall, but,
But
It's-
specifically, it's wrong.
the parking area, plus I feel like they didn't want us there 100% all of the time. It was a COVID thing that they allowed us to be there, and I don't know that it's, heated and air conditioned. I know it's heated, but I'm not sure about
Yeah.
climate and that sort of thing. So that was another issue. That's not necessarily ADA, that's just a comfortability, because I wouldn't want to work there June 28th if there's no air.
How about
But-
how about your tool shed?
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, open to suggestions if there's any that you can think of that.
Is there any grants out there that maybe here's some money to make some of these places?
Well,
Maybe.
not right now, not any open ones that I know of. So I don't know if they will come out with another one soon, but at the present time, there is not. But like with the Concord polling place, it would take structural changes to be able to get that in compliance.
Okay, so in other words, this will be kind of an ongoing thing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and it has been for years.
And I
So,
remember when Lisa first brought it up, and it's just a few years back. So.
right.
Okay. Mr. Elvers,
Tomorrow is the deadline for the first installment tax collection. Things have been going well. We had a lot of people coming in to pay today, especially through the banks and stuff. And then also the tax trustee is having another tax sale. All bids have to be into my office by July 23rd. So catalogs are available in my office if you're interested in purchasing any properties that are around the county that belong to the tax trustee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yergler.
Obviously, our office has been busy to coincide with the first installment tax bills, processing certificates of heirs for lack of exemptions, other heirs, so forth, that are correctable by that way. And after tomorrow, hopefully it'll slow down so we can get back to getting busy on other things. It pretty much takes everything, can't get anything done because phone's either ringing or somebody's coming to the counter. So that's where we're at on that. So usually after the first installment, most of the certificates of heirs have been processed that are going to be. There are some that will come up, but not like the volume we have now. So hopefully that'll slow down and go from there. So that's really about all we're doing this month is answering questions for taxpayers on their tax bills. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
John.
Have you heard anything more from that solar farm down by Buckley or application?
Nope. Out of work.
Do you know what company is wanting to install it?
Same one. P&E.
Okay. How many,
I have, huh?
how many farms are involved?
I couldn't tell you. I think originally they told me between 8 to 13, maybe. I don't know. But there was one specific farmer that was more involved, I think, than others. But I've not seen any documentation or plans, so I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I know they did inquire about the amended solar ordinance. That's the last I've heard from them.
Planning and zoning office report. Mr. Yergler.
Considering the cost of building materials, I'm pleasantly surprised. We're ahead of last year as far as total receipts on building permits. Go figure. I think there was a big push to get in underneath some of the rising lumber costs, but still pretty steady. As you can see, there is a difference between total building permit fees and total receipts for fiscal year. The reason for the difference is we're in the process of collecting fees for kennel licensing, mobile home parks, campgrounds, and so forth. So they don't require building permits, so those are above and beyond fees for the building permit. So that's the difference in that number. But other than that, like I said, John asked me a question about solar. I haven't heard much on that front. So obviously we're about $5,000 over last year receipts year to date. So that's pretty much all I have. Just keep plugging away and answering questions. And that's 2 months there of building permits since I wasn't at last month's meeting. That's May and June.
Right.
So figure I'd give you May since I wasn't here last month.
Discussion on building permit enforcement fines and penalties. that will go on the agenda for next
Table
month.
it, keep it going, so we got,
Right,
I've talked to Jeff about it, preliminary, talked to him about it, and he's all in. Just a question of me and him hooking up and getting together with him and Jim Devine, because obviously the state's attorney's the enforcement part of the process, and we gotta see what he's willing to do and what he's willing not to do.
okay. So that will be on the agenda for next month then, Amanda. Discussion and action on publication of rural homesteads. Anyone have anything to say on that? Bob, would you want to kind of give the outline of what we can do and like bring this?
I'm basically the, always, you know, and the way I've talked to people about it is, and they call, and they ask me what they can and can't do, and I said, unless you have a specific property in mind, I really can't give you any kind of concrete or even a tentative answer, because every situation's different.
Right.
And so I need people with, you got a specific property in mind, then I can answer questions. And to answer them in general, I could go on and on with all the different scenarios, and most people would forget what I said, you know, 2 minutes before, so. Because there's always scenarios for every specific property. Because we deal with size, we deal with floodplain, we deal with location, we deal with what they want to build, you know, it's just, so you give me a property and I can look it up, and then I can give you what you can and can't do and what you might be able to do. That's pretty much where I stand on that.
Do you get quite a few calls of that nature?
People call and say, how many acres do I need to build? Well, in the simplest terms, you need A1, you need 75, and A2, you need 35. But there are scenarios out there for every property that can be adjusted or can be talked about. But you give me a specific property, we can start talking. And I don't think you want to change the A1 and A2 basis of it. I don't think you want to change that, but there's parcels out there that are conducive to building a property on, and there are parcels out there that aren't conducive to building building on, depending on floodplain and that kind of stuff. So I don't, just to say what's just concrete rule, there isn't one, except for if you ask me how many acres you need, I said if you're an A1 you need 75, and if you're A2 you need 35, and that turns a lot of people off. But I said, you can do it on smaller, but I need to know a specific property and what your odds are of having it rezoned. And with the current makeup of the board, odds are better on stuff that's conducive to build on. But I need a specific property. I just can't say that in general speaking.
John, do you have any comments?
Well, we had talked about this subject at the last several meetings, and I think the idea was to try and figure out a way that we might publicize and make available our willingness to, or encouragement for people to come and investigate those opportunities. And I think what Bob was saying is certainly the stance that we have to take. We have to find out exactly when somebody is interested, what they have in mind and so forth. I think but the other side of the coin was that we were trying to develop ideas or ways by which, as I said, we might publicize or encourage people to look into these opportunities.
Question. Is there a current listing of properties or land for sale in Iroquois County? Just a listing, or where would you go to look at something?
If you're looking for current listing information, you have to go to the MLS, real estate MLS system, which I have access to. And then you could do, but those are more what's actually listed for sale by a realtor. There's
Right.
stuff out there that's privately, people always
Yeah.
get. And that's the other part of the equation. You have to have a willing participant on the other end. And if they're not willing to sell off part of their ground that's conducive to build because it's theirs and they're not gonna sell it, then that pretty much nixes that idea anyway. So, but, to find out what's actually listed for sale, you just get on the MLS and you can do a search.
For the ones that are not listed, are like the townships notified, or do they kind of keep an eye on it? Or like, no,
No.
it's just like everybody's private sale and that's.
So, all I have access to is what's been sold and what is listed for sale as far as actual being listed for sale on the real estate side, and then what actually has been sold.
Okay.
And I have what's been sold, I have access to whether it's through a realtor or a private sale. But, to actually go through the county and Google search, just on the GIS system and, that would be time consuming and and it'd be a lot of work for not knowing if the person on the other end would be even receptive to the idea of selling off from their farm. And but there are actually individual properties that have their own PIN number that could be conducive to selling. It would take time, just to search that. But
I'm not sure that we're advocating or wanting to have something set up whereby your office would be a clearinghouse for these kind of things.
no, I don't.
We're trying to find a way that we can advertise to the general public a willingness on the part of the county to cooperate with people and to get, obviously to get, if somebody sees a piece of property that they'd like to build on or what have you, we want to encourage that. We want to encourage them to come and talk to you and go through the whole process that they have to go through, even though it might not result in a success. We know there have been successes for this type of thing. We're trying to find ways to get more successes, I think, is what we're saying, and get the properties on the tax rolls too.
No matter how you cut it, I had a guy call me this morning. Said he wanted to build a pole building on his property, and he said, I don't have 5 acres, but I have a house on 1.5 acres, but I've been told I can't build a pole building because I don't have 5 acres. And I go, well, that's totally false. I don't know where that comes from, but there's just, I don't know how you combat coffee shop talk, but that's.
And that's another facet to this thing. It seems like there's so many different facets or situations that exist out there, but you're right, people have misunderstandings, there's misinformation.
But when people call me, I just say, if you have a specific property in mind, reach out to me. I can look at it and I can pretty much, give them odds and whatever, what you can and can't do and what's conducive and go from there. And then, their realtors are out there looking for stuff too that they can have available. And so,
I think that was one idea that I had or thought that I'm not sure we had talked about before, was maybe trying to get in touch with some of the realtors and discussing this type of thing with them and see what their thoughts are.
but
If they don't have a listing on it or a position for sale, they're not gonna
But
realize it.
they do, as far as, the perception, they have people call them more than they call me. I'm looking to find something in this area. What can I do and what I can't do? And that's something that, and some realtors have talked to me at length about what can and can't be done, and some haven't. So, and I do inform them that the board's been more receptive than it used to be back when this, the stigma, whatever you wanna call it, was set, that if you have farm ground, you can't ever rezone it. That's, to some degree, it's still true, but it's not like it was. And that's, so. Because there are people that are adamantly against spot, what we call spot zoning. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
I guess to an extent we are, but then again, there are these abandoned homesteads on
That's,
farms
yeah,
and so
that's,
forth.
yeah, right.
And
And,
one of the basis of what we're talking about too.
and I think what's, it's in the ordinance that if it's been gone for more than 2 years, you have to rezone it to build on it if it's still, but to me, if it's still grass and still, you may even have an active wall on it, why would you force somebody to rezone that? If it's a 5 or 6 acre tract that had a house on it 15 years ago. Now, if it was the farmer who tore all the farmstead down and plowed it under and put it under till again, that's different. But there's some scenarios out there that, and there's some other sites that will not be conducive to that because they keep them that way because they're a centennial farm. The old homestead's gone, but where the house sat before is, you have to keep that way to keep your centennial farm status, I believe, don't you? Or,
I don't know.
There's several of them out there. You just go by and you wonder why there's just grass and one old shed there. Well, then you see those Centennial Farm signs in the front area, and that's why. And those they'll never sell them off, obviously. So it's, like I said, that's why it's a case by case basis.
Do you think it would be helpful if maybe we could draft some kind of a letter or release that we could send to the real estate agents and the building contractors to kind of summarize the situation and maybe encourage them to promote this kind of thing?
You can. I'm not. As a zoning administrator, that's not my job. I mean, that's kind of putting me on both sides of the issue.
I'm not asking you to do it. I'm just asking your opinion if you think something like that would be.
Yeah, the more people, obviously, the real estate agents are your front line as far as dealing with potential buyers. And right now, there's no denying it. There's a lot more inquiries from people up north looking to do stuff.
I think that's part of the impetus for this, is that we can try and take advantage of that.
And obviously, the devil in the room, there's people that don't want that also. Stay up north. That's just the reality. But there's some that says, so.
The face of the county is changing in a number of ways.
Yep.
If you participated in the 4th of July parade in Watsika, you would have noticed that.
I didn't participate. I never participated.
The ones of us did. If you compare the people that were viewing the parade with those that were there maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there are a lot of differences showing up. And there may be some good to it, and maybe not so good. Depends on what side of the fence it's on. We still have to recognize that's what's happening.
I'm off in the yard of my dog, and people go buying golf carts all the time. I have no clue who they are. And I live in a town of 650 people. I used to know everybody. I know, yeah, I get it. Except for Breen, I see her real fast.
Got a drink in her hand.
Does she have a golf cart too?
She's got a mule or something.
A mule?
Little Honda.
Little Honda. But yeah,
I guess one suggestion that the committee might want to consider is if they might want to put together some kind of a letter or whatever that would summarize some of this.
Okay.
Send that out to, probably could send it to the building contractors, the real estate agents, maybe even newspapers or what have you. I don't know.
What about auctioneers? They do on a farm.
Anybody that might be involved, I think would be somebody that said something like that.
The thing would be is to get everything that John earlier, but talked about bring it all together in that letter, so we'll have to work on that and hopefully get something out in the near future. So we can keep this on the agenda and hopefully by next month have some type of thing that lets us get going on it. Okay, is there any old business? Any new business to come before the committee? Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
John, on our meeting list, he is